In this homework video, we're going to cover problem number 6 from section 3.7. So it says, use implicit differentiation to find dy dx, dy over dx. So remember here, the idea with implicit differentiation is we're just going to do normal differentiation on this problem. And then what we have to deal with is the variable that's being taken a derivative with regards to a different variable. So in this case, I want to find dy over dx, which means I want to take the derivative of both sides of this with respect to x. Okay. So in both cases, on both sides of this equation, you can see we've got a product, so I need to use the product rule. So the product rule says you take the first part of the product, so in this case x, times the derivative of the second part of the product, plus the derivative of the first part times the second part. And we'll just do that on both sides of the equation. Okay, so then we can start doing that. So in this first side, we've got the derivative of something with something inside of it. So we need to use the chain rule. So we take the derivative of the outside. So that's the derivative of sine. So the derivative of sine is just negative cosine. So the opposite of cosine, 4x plus 5y. And then the chain rule says we multiply that by the derivative of the inside. So the derivative of 4x plus 5y. In the next term, we've got the derivative of x with respect to x, which is just 1 times sine of 4x plus 5y. Then on this other side, we've got the derivative of cosine with respect to x. So that's just sine x. And then the derivative of y with respect to x, which we don't really know what that is, but we can simplify it as dy over dx times the cosine of x. Okay, and then we're just going to keep working through these derivatives and simplifying as we go along. So over here, we can multiply x times negative cosine of x. So that'll be negative x cosine of 4x plus 5y. And then we do the derivative of the inside. So the derivative of the inside here, derivative of 4x is just 4. Derivative of 5y is 5. And then times the derivative of y with respect to x. So 5 dy dx. Plus 1 times sine of 4x plus 5y is just sine of 4x plus 5y. And on the left-hand side, there are no derivatives to take. We've already taken all the derivatives. Okay. And so now we've done all the derivatives, right? We've simplified them all down as much as possible. So now what we want to do is we're trying to find dy dx. So we're trying to solve for dy over dx. So that's what we want to do. We want to collect that on one side and set everything else on the other. So first thing we want to do is we want to distribute, right? We've got a term here. We've got a number times a sum. So we want to distribute. So 4 times negative x cosine of 4x plus 5y is negative 4x cosine of 4x plus 5y. And 5 dy dx times negative x cosine of 4x plus 5y is negative 5x cosine of 4x plus 5y dy over dx, and then everything else stays the same. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to collect all the terms with dy dx. So that would be this term and this term on one side of the equation and everything else on the other. So what I want to do is I'm going to add 5x cosine of 4x plus 5y dy dx to both sides, and I'm going to subtract y sine x from both sides. Okay, and just to save room, I'm not going to rewrite out what I'm doing here, but you guys all know that I'm adding this term to both sides, and I'm subtracting this term from both sides. So on the left-hand side, if we reorder the terms so that we get a positive term first, what we'll have is sine of 4x plus 5y, right? So I decided to write this term down first because it was positive, and then I'm going to subtract the other two terms. So I'm going to subtract y sine x and negative 4x cosine of 4x plus 5y. So minus y sine x minus 4x cosine of 4x plus 5y. And then on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add the two terms together that I've got. So I've got dy over dx cosine of x plus 5x cosine of 4x plus 5y. dy dx. Okay, and we're trying to solve for dy dx. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to factor out our common term here, which is dy dx. So the left-hand side of the equation stays the same. And then the right-hand side of the equation, we factor out the dy dx. So we've got dy over dx times cosine x plus 5x cosine of 4x plus 5y. And now all we have to do is divide both sides by cosine x plus 5x cosine of 4x plus 5y, and we'll be done, right? Because these will cancel, and I'll be left with dy dx. And I'm going to choose to write the dy dx on the left-hand side now of my final answer, because I can flip an equation as long as I don't change the parts of the equation. I can flip which side I write them on due to the reflexive property and still get the same answer. So our final answer is dy over dx is sine of 4x plus 5y minus y sine x minus 4x cosine of 4x plus 5y all over cosine of x plus 5x cosine of 4x plus 5y. So I hope this video has been helpful and helped you understood this problem better. If you have any further questions, feel free to send me an email or a text message, or put a question in the comments on the YouTube video. That's it for this one.